Birth, life, death. Since the dawn of time, this cycle has been absolute, inescapable. But what if I told you the first person to live 200 years old is already alive today? For decades, Silicon Valley has been pouring funds into longevity projects. Critics call it a fantasy, a vanity project for billionaires trying to buy eternity. We don't take it seriously because we trust in one truth that binds us: mortality. Death is a great equalizer. The king, the beggar, no matter who you are, we all share the same fate. But what if that truth is collapsing, and the crack we are seeing today is the beginning of the end of death itself? Welcome to the first episode of House Notes. Today, we are looking at a medical breakthrough that has just entered human clinical trials. It's called epigenetic reprogramming. It is the ability to take an old damaged cell and measurably reverse its biological age. Yes, you heard that right. They aren't just slowing down aging, they are actually reversing old cells to their younger states. Built on the research done at Harvard University, the biotech firm Life Biosciences received FDA clearance to start the first human trial of this kind in February. It is, without exaggeration, a miracle, but it's a miracle that comes with an intriguing and frankly terrifying question. When science finally cures aging, how will this impact a society already fractured by inequality? However, before we look at the future this might create, and to show you why this isn't just another Silicon Valley pipe dream, we have to understand the hard science of how they're doing it, and it all started by completely redefining what aging actually is. For all of human history, we have assumed aging is a hardware problem, wear and tear, the rusting of a machine. But researchers have recently discovered that aging is actually not a hardware problem. It is a software one. Essentially, it is a loss of information. Imagine your DNA as a master cookbook. It contains every recipe needed to build you. But a heart cell doesn't need the recipe for a brain cell. A skin cell doesn't need the recipe to grow hair. To manage this, your body uses a mechanism called DNA methylation. Think of it as chemical sticky notes placed on the pages of that cookbook, telling the cell which recipes to cook and which to be left closed. This is your epigenetic software, and is guarded by a crew of proteins called sirtuins. Think of these sirtuins as cellular librarians. Their job is to patrol the aisles, making sure those sticky notes stay exactly where they belong to, so that the cells know their identities. But these librarians are also your body's emergency responders. Every time your DNA is damaged, by a sunburn, by smoking, by toxins, or just the natural radiation of the earth, they drop their books and rush to repair the broken hardware. Over decades, this constant multitasking creates what scientists refer to as epigenetic noise. This is essentially the librarians get distracted. They don't make it back to their original posts. They leave the wrong recipes open and close the right ones. The software glitches. A skin cell forgets how to build a robust skin cell and you get wrinkles. That glitch is what we know as aging. It's like a scratched CD. The music is still in there, but the laser can't read it anymore. But here is the billion-dollar breakthrough. The cookbook isn't missing any pages. The data is still there, just buried under the chaos. If we can trigger specific eraser enzymes, specifically the TET enzymes, a specific type of protein, to peel off the misplaced sticky notes, we can run a system restore to our cell and reboot the cell to its original useful state. So, how do you actually trigger a biological system restore? The answer came from Kyoto University. Back in 2006, a scientist named Shinya Yamanaka made a discovery that won him the Nobel Prize. He found 4 specific biological factors, namely OCT4, SOX2, CAL4, and c-MYC, that could take an adult cell and turn it all the way back into an embryonic stem cell. This 4-factor formula became known as the Yamanaka factors. It was a total rewrite of biology. But there was a massive lethal catch. If you give a living breathing animal the full 4-factor formula, the cells forget their identities entirely. They divide uncontrollably and turn into massive deadly tumors. You didn't make the mouse younger, you gave it terminal cancer. The safety breakthrough came years later, when researchers dropped the M, the c-MYC, from the 4 factors, which happened to be a powerful oncogene. Without it, the cell doesn't revert all the way back to a black state stem cell and doesn't turn into a tumor. It just gets a bit younger compared to what it was. Long-term studies prove that expressing this refined 3-factor formula in mice for 21 straight months resulted in absolutely 0 tumors. So, how do these 3 remaining factors, factor O, factor S, and factor K, reach the locked DNA? Think of factor S as the crowbar. It forcefully pries open the tightly wound, closed chapters of your DNA. Once factor S cracks the door, factor O steps in like a master key, rewriting the chemical code, and factor K is the lubricant, keeping the genetic mechanism smooth and stable. Together, they force the genome open, clear the rust, and left the cellular librarians get back to work. Before we could prove this worked, scientists needed a way to measure it. Enter the epigenetic clock, discovered by Steve Howes. This is a blood test that doesn't rate how many years you have been alive. It rates how biologically degraded your cells actually are. It rates the placement of those sticky nodes. Waits the clock in place. Think of aging like a battery drain. Over decades, the charge fades. Trauma, on the other hand, is a power surge, sudden, violent, but both trigger the exact same biological emergency protocol. The librarians leave their posts, the software glitches. This experiment proved something radical. Whether your cells are falling from the slow 80-year drain of old age or a sudden violent surge of trauma, like a crushed nerve, the underlying problem is exactly the same. It's epigenetic noise. Think of your youth like a perfectly clear radio station, a high-definition signal broadcasting the instructions for a healthy, vibrant body. Aging is like driving your car further and further away from the radio station. The further you go, the more static crosses into the signal. Eventually, the music is still playing, but all you can hear is white noise. You haven't lost the sound. You have just lost the clarity. A sudden injury, like a crushed nerve, is like a massive thunderstorm rolling in, creates so much interference that the signal cuts off instantly. But here is the breakthrough. The OSK 3-factor cocktail reset isn't trying to rebuild the radio tower. It's a high-powered antenna that cuts through the interference. It proves that the broadcast of your youth never actually stopped. It was just buried under decades of static. The OSK factors turned the dial back to the exact right frequency, and suddenly your cells remembered how to be young again. And more importantly, we didn't have to guess if the signal was clear. The epigenetic clocks provided the cold, hard data. They showed that the static, those chemical tags cluttering the DNA, had been physically wiped away. On a molecular level, the biological radio was back in the heart of the city. The cells were not just acting better, they were physically younger. Fixing a crushed nerve is incredible. But what about a chronic age-related disease? In 2023, Harvard Medical School fundamentally shifted the paradigm of aging from an inevitable decay to a loss of information. They tested a 3-gene cocktail on a lab rat with established glaucoma, a disease characterized by the crushing of the optic nerve. After just 8 weeks, the results were staggering. The lab rats, regained 50% of their lost visual acuity, a feat previously thought biologically impossible in mammals. Researchers confirmed this wasn't just a temporary boost, but a literal reversal of the biological clock. Using DNA methylation clocks, they measured the epigenetic noise on the lab rat's DNA, the chemical tags that accumulate and scramble gene expression as we age. Post-treatment, the DNA methylation patterns of the old blind neurons had physically shifted back to a state nearly identical to those of a newborn lab rat. Even more revolutionary was the discovery of epigenetic memory. When the OSK treatment was switched off after 4 weeks, the cells didn't revert to their aged state. Instead, they maintained their useful function, proving that the cells possess a backup copy of their original healthy settings. By clearing away the scratches on the epigenetic record, the researchers allowed the cells to remember how to be young without losing their identity. A heart cell remained a heart cell, and a neuron remained a neuron, but they functioned with the vigor of a juvenile. This systematic reprogramming didn't just fix eyes. It regenerated muscle, tissue, restored cardiac pumping capacity, and even turned gray fur back to its original dark pigment, extending the healthy lifespan of a lab rat by significant margins. Current medicine is a gardener with shears. Doctors prune the dead branches to keep the tree from dying faster. Have high blood pressure? Here is a pill to lower it. They manage the decay. They don't make the tree grow new leaves. But epigenetic reprogramming? This therapy waters the roots. This isn't just a medical breakthrough. It is the foundation of a multi-trillion-dollar industry. We are no longer making drugs that just slow down disease. We have found the code to reverse biological time. And Wall Street is seeing that. That brings us to right now, 2026. A biotech company called Life Biosciences, with the co-founder being the lead researcher for the medical breakthrough we have just talked about at Harvard Medical School, is currently running the first human trials for this exact technology. The FDA cleared their ER100 trial for patients suffering from glaucoma and eye strokes, conditions that until this very moment were considered permanent and progressive. To deliver this treatment, they use a modified harmless virus called AAV vector to carry the OSK genes directly into the eye. They are threading the needle by testing 2 groups, a low dose of 200 billion genetic instructions and a high dose of 600 billion. They are watching closely for immune risks like uveitis, essentially making sure the human body's security system doesn't attack its own genetic turn-up. But here is the truly clever part. The rejuvenation isn't always on. If it were, we would risk the cancer problem again. Instead, patients take a simple doxycycline pill, a common antibiotic, for 8 weeks. That pill acts as a chemical on switch. The virus sits dormant in the eye until the pill activates it. Once the 8 weeks are up, they stop the pill, effectively locking in the useful memory for the cells. If it works in the eye, the liver is next, and then the heart, and then the brain, then eventually the whole body. The science is undeniably brilliant, but who owns the patents to this brilliance? The answer? Private corporations, which brings us to the dark side of this immortality technology. Let's look at the pressing precedent. The closest parallel we have right now for this kind of AAV gene therapy is a drug called Luxturna, which cures a specific type of genetic blindness. It costs over $400,000 USD per eye. Even if manufacturing scales up, viral vector therapies remain astronomically expensive to produce and administer safely. And what's worse, our modern healthcare system is built entirely on the aging reimbursement barrier. If you have clinical late-stage glaucoma, maybe your insurance will eventually pay for it. But what if you aren't sick yet? What if you are in your 50s, feeling a bit sluggish, and you want to use epigenetic reprogramming off-label just to keep your heart, your brain, and skin biologically 30 years old? Insurance won't cover a dime. Aging is not currently classified as a disease by the FDA. Therefore, prevention of aging is a cosmetic luxury. You will have to pay out of pocket for it. We were warned about this kind of socio-economic and ethical challenges before. But let's look at what this kind of challenge actually means in practice. Imagine a billionaire CEO. They undergo systematic reprogramming. They live to 150, possessing the physical energy and neuroplasticity of a 30 years old. What happens to compound interest when you can leave your money in the stock market for over a century while still earning a CEO's salary? Generational wealth becomes eternal wealth. What happens to politics if senators can hold office for a century without their minds degrading? What happens to the housing market when the older generation never passes their estates down to the youth? And even better, what if, by the time they reach their 150s, technology has advanced further, and they can extend their lifespans again, while ordinary citizens die in their 70s and 80s? These people would, in practice, become immortal from our perspective. The human trial started this year, 2026, and probably by 2045, or even before that, we will have FDA-approved drug for reversing your biological age. And then for the first time in human history, inequality won't just be about access to better doctors, better food, better education, or better neighborhoods. It will be about access to time itself. We are entering an era where AI and automation are replacing our jobs, and the cost of living continues to skyrocket as governments continue to print money. If you can barely afford rent, who will be able to afford the reboot? We risk creating a world where the working class is left to suffer the natural indignities of age. Frailty, joint pain, blindness, dementia, while the wealthy maintain the biology of gods. For centuries, economies relied on a healthy population to function. There was a built-in incentive to cascade medical advances down to the general population, because human labor was the engine of wealth creation. But in the near future, with AI growing increasingly powerful every year, this may not be held true anymore. When machines replace the workers, the incentive to keep us healthy disappears. And when that happens, the last tether binding the fate of the rich to the survival of the poor is severed. We are staring down the barrel of a literal biological caste system, where the global elite don't just live better than us, they are creating a new human species. They live longer, and perhaps, from the perspective of an ordinary mortal person like you and me, they live forever like gods.